So what kind of city is this that Socrates is building? Well, as we'll see, it's a very strange city in many ways. And we should keep in mind, I think, in anticipation of Book 4 and larger argument Republic, that Socrates has an agenda in terms of the city. He definitely wants it to work out a certain way. In fact, in terms of the whole argument of the book, it has to turn out in a certain way, and the most essential part of this city is its class structure. That is, this city is divided up into three major political classes, each assigned a certain function, and each in some way contributing to the welfare of the city. And it's very clear also that it's an authoritarian city. It's class rule, that we'll come out with this class called the Guardians, who are obviously the ruling class. And as we'll see, because of certain restrictions put onto them, not the richest class. In fact, we'll find they don't own any property at all, but they're the ones who rule, the ones who make decisions. They're also the ones who fight in the wars. So let's keep that in mind as something we're heading toward. We want to understand the class structure of this city. But how does it get started, and how do these classes emerge? In building the city, Socrates, it's quite an interesting, sociological theory, and that is that cities, and for a Greek, a city was a political community, and there are very small places, these little city-states that the Greeks lived in. So city is a term that means more than just a geographical place. It means the political community, its laws, its religion, its culture, its traditions. His idea is that cities, the origin of city is in the mutual need that individuals have of each other. That is, that human beings cannot produce everything that they need to live decently by themselves, so they rely on each other in a division of labor to produce the things that they need. So the original city that Socrates builds is quite simple. It has its farmers and its builders and such, and it's quite small, and that city is built by, I guess, around page 50, and he begins to describe what kind of city it is. He says at the bottom of page 50, "Perhaps what you say is right. We must look into it and not back off. First then, let's see what sort of life people will lead who have been provided for in this way. They will make food, wine, clothes, and shoes, won't they? And they will build themselves houses. In the summer, they will mostly work naked and barefoot, but in the winter, they will wear adequate clothing and shoes. For nourishment, they will provide themselves with barley meal and wheat flour, which they will knead and bake into noble cakes and loaves, and serve up on a reed or on clean leaves." No dishes, right? "They will recline on couches strewn with yew and myrtles, and feast with their children, drink their wine, and crowned with wreaths, hymn the gods. They will enjoy having sex with one another, but they will produce no more children than their resources allow, lest they fall into either poverty or war." At this point, Glaucon interrupted and said, "It seems that you make your people feast without any relishes." Relishes, fancy things, desserts. Socrates says, "True enough, I was forgetting that they will also have relishes. Salt, of course, and olives and cheese, and they will boil roots and vegetables the way they boil them in the country. We will give them desserts too, I imagine, consisting of figs, chickpeas, and beans. And they will roast myrtles and acorns before the fire and drink in moderation, and so they will live in peace and good health, it seems. And when they die at a ripe old age, they will pass on a similar sort of life to their children." So Socrates thinks the city is done. He's done his job. He's created a city, a very simple city. And the idea then is to look at where the justice is in it and the injustice is in it, and they'll have completed part of their tasks, finding out what justice is and its opposite. But you have to remember that the people who are listening to this conversation, the people who are taking part in it, are all very wealthy, urbane men, for the most part. So maybe the kind of existence that Socrates is describing in his hypothetical city is not to their taste. So Glaucon says, if you were founding a city of pigs, Socrates, isn't that just what you would provide to fatten them? I mean, he has said they're going to eat acorns, right? That is, to Glaucon's mind, this does not sound like a very nice place to live. And that makes the thing go on. Socrates then says, oh, you want a luxurious city, so all sorts of other people come in, the people who provide the luxuries, the poets, the actors, the hunters, so they can eat meat, the musicians, barbers, beauticians, even the prostitutes. And that was a very common thing, open legal thing in ancient Greece. So the city gets larger, and the city's needs get larger. So with these larger needs, they need more land, or at least they need to protect the land and wealth that they've produced. So a new vocation, a new job comes then into the city. At the bottom of 52, Socrates says, the city must be further enlarged then, my dear Glaucon, and not just a little, by the size of a whole army. Because you need an army. You're going to need soldiers to defend the city, to fight its wars, to provide for these expanded and more luxurious needs. Implying that you need professional soldiers. And Glaucon at the top of page 53 says something that to a Greek mind would be very natural response to what Socrates has said. Glaucon says, why so? Aren't the inhabitants themselves adequate for that purpose? Because in an ancient Greek city, the pride that they took was that they were free people and they defended themselves. There were no professional soldiers in Greece at that time. All of the armies were militias, that is, they were citizen soldiers, citizen armies. Socrates reminds them that they've made this principle that everyone should stick to what they're naturally suited, and there should be a division of labor. As he says, I think we agreed, if you remember, that it is impossible for a single person to practice many crafts well. And then he reminds them that the craft of warfare, of handling weapons, of fighting in war, is a very difficult skill. It takes a long time to learn. So he convinces them, again, against their better instincts, that they should have this professional army. And that's where things really start to get going, because it's this class of soldiers who are almost immediately called guardians, because they guard the city, that becomes the focus. And in what follows, we kind of switch from a political or social philosophy to a philosophy of education, because Socrates is very concerned with how these guardians will be chosen and how they'll be educated, because they will have tremendous power, of course, and in order to be trusted with that power of defending the city, they're going to have to be certain types of people. They're going to have to be trustworthy people. And so what we get in the rest of Book 2 and much of Book 3 is a description of the education of this guardian class. And it's the focus on this class that becomes Socrates' real obsession. How can we make the guardians the best people we possibly can, so they're able to fulfill their function of guarding the city.